So, it's been a while. It's been almost 10 years since I've done a video blog entry. The last time I think was in 2011, maybe. So quite a while. So a lot has changed, a lot to go over. I decided to resurrect the video blog now because there's a lot of things happening in our world that I'd like to address. I've also gone through a lot of change personally and growth, and wanted to add my voice into the conversation. It is a large conversation, the things I'm going to talk about. So I no means claim to be an expert on anything that I'm discussing. Again, just adding another voice into the conversation, which is a lot of people probably like, we don't need another voice, which I understand. As a writer that I admire says, some people might find this useful, and for the people who don't find it useful, just throw it away, ignore, block, whatever. No harm, no foul. This series that I'm discussing is based on some writings that I've been putting together called The Human Condition. And it's basically talking about the current state of the human race. And you'll notice that I'm going to be talking about the human race as a single race. When I talk about race, I'm not talking about skin shade or skin color. I'm talking about the human species. You'll never hear me say, unless I'm referencing something just for historical purposes, you'll not hear me say black people, white people, yellow people, Asian people, whatever. In this particular series, I'll have other videos where I'm talking, casually, more stuff like family, things like that. But in this particular series, I'm not going to be addressing skin shade, skin color, because there's only one race, and that's the human race. There's people who disagree because that's not the way the world is currently shaped. Again, to quote something or someone, just because that's not how it is doesn't mean that's not how it should be. And we're not going to make any progress unless we start being more like the change we want to see. There's a couple of fundamental things. The human condition is a theory centered around a constant reflection on the current state of human relations as it pertains to the overall wellness of the human species. This wellness is sometimes referred to as a connection, bond, or link that is the tethering force that binds all humans together regardless of labels. All human beings are connected. We've heard that throughout our history. But what we want to sort of like bridge together is what are those things that bring us all together throughout human history, not just American history, not Russian history, not Spanish history or Filipino history or Chinese history or whatever, the human history. There are certain things that we have done as a species, right, that affects the whole entire human race, certain things that we've invented that has changed our trajectory of the human race. My goal is for us to start this conversation in a way that we're kind of looking at the future of the human race, and I'm talking like the sci-fi kind of stuff. You might think it's like science fiction, right? Some of it sounds probably like science fiction, like, oh, that is not real, but a lot of it is very real and it's happening as we speak or as you're listening to me speak. So you can't do that without looking at some of the things we've done, where we are today, and where we want to be. Right, because there's a large conversation happening today over the seas, in Europe and Asia and the United States, all around the world, and people are trying to figure out like where we want to go as a species. I think one thing we can all agree on is that there's something not quite right, right? Even if you're like wealthy, whether you're wealthy, poor, whatever your skin shade is. We all as a human species, I think we all kind of feel like something's not quite right. Something's a little off. Like we're not where we should be, right? I think we all kind of can agree on that, which is why a lot of people are having these dialogues with themselves, these conversations internally or with family, with coworkers, or whatever medium they choose to get their message out. I'll just give like a little background, quickly about like how I came to decide to do this video series. So in 2013, I started my degree at Arizona State University online from California. I was continuing my education, so I started my education like in 2000, I think, a long time ago, as a business major, and then switched to English because my math skills weren't that great, but my English skills have always been super advanced. So I started that, didn't finish, started working instead to pay bills and make a living. I graduated from junior college with my associate's degree in liberal arts. So I finished that, and then I decided to pick back up where I left off and continue with my English degree many years later. While I was at Arizona State University, or before I started, I spoke to a counselor. I think I had like a meeting or phone call, something, where we were discussing my trajectory of my educational goals and things like that. During the discussion, we talked about a minor, like what a minor studies was. She explained it to me, and I took a class in family, ethnicity, and cultural diversity. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, it's in the human development, sort of like family human development field of studies. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Like, I want to do that. And she was like, oh, well, it'll take you longer if you choose that one. You should maybe think about law or political science, because I'd already had some of that under my belt at Santa Monica College in California. I was like, no, I really like this one. This was like, this is the stuff that I've been studying my entire life. I just, I didn't know there was a like field of study about it. So picked that up as a minor. So I had my major is English, but my minor, picked up a minor in family and human development. And it took longer because I had to start from the beginning. Like, I didn't have any past studies, history in that. So started from the beginning and did all these courses. I think it was like 9 or so courses, which spans over a course of 3 years, right? Because you can't cram 9 courses in one semester. That'd be crazy. It was a lot. But during that, we studied everything from the life process, or like aging, parenting, cultural diversity. We looked at it was really everything, almost everything that affected the human development, right? As a species, the human species. It really influenced my thought process and like some of the things I had already kind of had. Like, I'd already kind of been, if you look at some of my older blog posts back in 2000, whatever, 11, 13, I did touch on things like relationships and like some just general thing. But this is more like specifically focused on the human species, evolution of the human species, right? As human beings, we actually gravitate more towards each other than we do apart from one another. And you'll notice that if you take 2 infants, like 2 babies, they don't care what skin shade you are or what other category or label you add to yourself. They just play with each other. They have these sort of natural interactions with one another. So that should tell you that there's other things that happen along the trajectory of the human development that makes us. It's like things that we categorize, labels that we use to categorize and classify each other. These are things that later serve to divide us as a human species. So the goal is to unify as a single human race. And what I'm talking about when I'm talking about all this, put it into context, is I'm talking about human beings beginning the journey outside of Earth. And you might say, oh, that's stupid, that sounds crazy. In case you haven't been reading or listening to the news, it's happening as we speak. We currently have several initiatives and companies and corporations that are working to colonize or set up colonies on Mars and or the moon. We have NASA in the United States that is working on missions and things like that to the Mars and the moon. You have Elon Musk, of course, working to get a human being on Mars. I think right now, I think the distance between Mars and Earth to get here is like 6 months, maybe. I have to check myself on that one. But anyway, we are looking at leaving Earth. We are looking at expanding human presence outside of Earth, basically. That might sound like really cool, which it does sound to me. It's like it's awesome to me. But it also brings about certain questions and realities, right? Like whom among us, who gets Mars, who gets this piece over here, who gets that piece. If you look at human history, we fought and killed each other over land and territory because we were divided. Russia, United States, China, Korea, the Philippines, the UK. Like we've just been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and killing each other, as if we were different species, like as if we're two different. Like we actually need each other quite a bit. We're stronger unified than we are divided. The more unified we are, the more successful we are as a species, as a race. We come together, it only amplifies our technology, our medicine, our, everything. When we're divided, we just hurt each other. It hurts us. It's like the Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Like one of the tactics is divide and conquer. People think divide and conquer in the terms of like, oh, you split up, and two people kind of hit different objectives or whatever to reach a goal quicker. But the double-edged sword, double meaning to that is divide someone or a people, divide them, and it's easier to conquer, right? It's easier to defeat them when they're not unified. And that's what's happening currently around the world. And in the human species, we're completely divided. When we leave Earth, we are leaving as human beings. And as we travel, we are traveling as the human species. If we encounter any intelligent life, we encounter the intelligent life as the human race. Because if we leave Earth and we go to the moon, or we go to Mars, or whatever other planet we go to, separated and divided as we are now, we're going to repeat the same mistakes that we have made in human history. We are constantly at war with one another and at odds with each other over the stupidest things. And other people might not think it, but look around and it will become quite obvious to you what you're fighting over is ridiculous. Whether it's dirt, like a piece of land that none of us own, like it doesn't really belong to you. You kind of occupy a space temporarily, right? The United States wasn't always the United States. And you can say that for most places, like you just occupy it for a time, right? So we're fighting and killing each other over language, over religion, over cultures, over dietary practices, over like the stupidest things that we could possibly think, anything basically. And some people might think, well, that's the way humans are. No, that's not true. That's the way we've become because of these things that we created. These things that we created, these barriers, these categories of division, that is what's creating the animosity, the anger, the hatred, or whatever, because of the ego and the pride we feel about this false sense of identity from these things. That's what's making us crazy, right? Because again, some of the happiest humans are infants, and some of the most miserable humans are, well, adults. I'm gonna leave for now. We'll continue the conversation and discussion, and we'll move along talking about different areas. I'm going to focus a lot on science and technology to try to bridge the gap of understanding of what's happening in the world right now. Because there's a lot of things happening, a lot of scientific technologies and innovations that we are breaking through that's only going to further our efforts to move into space exploration and the occupation or the colonization of other planets, and then how we as a human race, as a human species, kind of have to come together to kind of bridge those gaps and hopefully make some significant changes. Just things that I think, this is not my one voice, that could help make a difference in the human race. So stay with me and let's keep the conversation going.